Green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go.
And a good morning, Birds fans. Another off-season week is upon us. The week after the Combine, we all got a little peek at what the Eagles may be looking at come draft time. We're here to continue to speculate for you on Birds 365 because this time next week, we can actually start talking about moves that could be made. And the best oxymoron in all of sports, legal tampering. Last time I checked, tampering is illegal. But the NFL waves its magic wand and says, no, we're going to call tampering legal. The 2-day run up to win.
To be the NFL, I hate being fair to the NFL, but the NFL calls it a legal negotiating period. So they're not the ones who came up with legal tampering. And I hate defending them, but yeah, it's an oxymoron. It just sounds funny, legal tampering.
Exactly.
Real tampering, which is illegal, happens in Indianapolis, which just finished up. So
right, there's tampering aplenty, but I'll try and go back. I swear I heard. You're right. It was probably a reporter who threw that tag on it, but I think I've even seen it printed as according to the NFL, legal tampering begins. But we'll see. You can do it. Call it what you want. Tampering is probably the wrong word because it's legal. The NFL rules say that you can talk to players. You're allowed to talk to players. You just can't get their name on a piece of paper and come to an agreement. You can come to a meeting of the minds, but you can't come to an agreement until Wednesday. So it's not really tampering. But there's got to be a better thing you can call it than even what did you say? The NFL
on their official, documentation, they call it the legal negotiation period.
Legal negotiation.
So, yeah.
Well, guess what? Wednesday's a legal negotiation period when you can actually get it signed, and Thursday and Friday. And what's the difference? You just can't come to.
Well, it's similar if you think about it from the perspective of the new league year is March 13th, March 11th. You can make a trade today. You know. If the Bears decide to trade Justin Fields, they can announce it today, and whoever acquires them can announce. But it's not going to become official until March 13th. So, if you look at it from that perspective, it's kind of the same. It's now part of the zeitgeist, the lexicon. So I get it. People call it legal tampering. They like to call it legal.
If you ask me, it's confusing, and the NFL should try and simplify it for their fans, not confuse them in what should be an exciting time when teams can actually start the next year and the rebuilding process. If you believe every team other than the Kansas Chiefs is rebuilding, because San Francisco 49ers came up short in overtime in the Super Bowl, but they need to rebuild a little bit because they didn't quite get the job done. And Johnny Mack, we knew during this offseason was going to be, and again, definitions, you can have your own definition. We try and find a meeting of the minds. I don't really believe the Eagles are rebuilding, but they've got work to do during this offseason, and they might have more work to do than we thought they had at the end of the season after that crushing defeat to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Because the top story for me in Eagle Land this weekend was the confirmation that Fletcher Cox is leaning toward, not officially retired, but leaning toward retirement. Jeremy Fowler, who's a really good at the NFL Inside the League reporter, not quite Schefter, but darn good in his own right, did say that sources are telling him Fletcher Cox will announce his retirement at some time during this offseason, which was, again, we're parsing words here, but
It's open-ended. Yeah.
You would hope that Fletcher would make that decision in the next 8 days or 7 days, because the Eagles, if Fletcher's going to retire, as much as he will be missed, as much as he will be honored for the phenomenal 12-year career he had. Jody McDonald here on Birds 365 last week called him their most consistent player on defense last year. Week 1 to the playoff loss, who was their most consistent defensive player? For me, his name was Fletcher Cox, and that says a lot. If he walks away, Johnny Mac, I know the tackle position is one where they do have talent. They have upside talent aplenty, and they've even got some depth with a guy like Milt Williams and Marlon Tuipulotu. But replacing Fletcher Cox is no easy feat, is it, Johnny Mac?
I don't think so, but I think it's one of those difficult decisions you have to make as an organization when you put so much investment in that particular position with high draft picks and young high draft picks. And really, as you mentioned, I'm glad you brought up Milton Williams, because people say it goes back 2 years. It really goes back 3 years with Milton Williams, and then Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. Now, they play different positions. Jordan Davis is a nose tackle, so that factors into it as well. But, from Fletcher's standpoint, he sees the writing on the wall. He's a veteran player. He knows how this works. And when they take players that highly, they generally want to get them on the field. And I think from his standpoint, I think you're right. You can make that argument. He was the most consistent player on the Eagles defense. He was certainly the most consistent defensive lineman. He's more consistent. I think Jalen Carter was better early in the season, but he didn't hold up throughout the whole season. And other than that, you could argue he's the best player on the defensive line as well. And I'm not talking about edge rushers, so the interior guys, because you have to throw Hassan Reddick in there as well. But he played well, is what I'm trying to say. And I think people look at it with Brandon Graham. Brandon is in a different phase, and he kind of accepted a lower role. And I don't know if Fletcher wants to accept that lower role and say, all right, I'll show up and I'll play 30% of the snaps for $5 million. I think he thinks he's a $10 million player, probably thinks he deserves more than that. Probably not wrong, by the way, considering the way he played last season. And then it becomes, well, you're probably not going to get that here. So do you want to continue your career elsewhere? And, I think that's the weight he's trying to figure out. Do I want to go somewhere else just to end my career? We all know and I don't want to put him in these categories, but you're a Joe Namath guy, you're a Jets guy. You think about him limping around in a Rams uniform, or what, Emmitt Smith in a Cardinals uniform, all these great, great players playing the end of their careers in an unfamiliar uniform. Sometimes it ends up kind of ugly. Maybe he doesn't want to do that from that standpoint. And, the thing about Fletcher is I'm not sure. And this happens every year on the bye week. And I always say it's one of those sort of funny moments for, you always have a new influx of media people, at least somewhat, especially on the TV end. And I've heard it 4 or 5 times, and they'll say, Fletch, on the bye week, what are you going to do on the bye week? Do you watch football? You're going to watch the Cowboys? You're going to watch? He's like, I don't watch football.
Right.
I'm not sure he's the guy who just loves, eats, and sleeps football. It's one of those things. He's just really good at it. And when he gets away from it, he wants to get away from it. And I think that makes it a little bit different as well. But ultimately, I think it comes down to he thinks he's still the best defensive tackle on this team. And the Eagles got a kickstart and building around Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and even Milton Williams. So I'm not sure that role is there for him.
And Anthony Rendon from the Angels last week said something very similar in their training camp, and they asked him about his downtime or whatever, and he said, baseball's my job. I come here, I prepare, I put the work in, but when I'm away from the field, family, friends, religion, important part of my life, I put baseball to the side. And he was roundly critiqued for it. You can't say, hey, you're getting paid $14 million.
Yeah.
That's just the fact for some players. And if they're very good at what they do, if they're playing great, you can do whatever the hell you want. If you want to spend your time roping cattle or whatever, fine. As long as you're the best player you can be, you can do whatever the hell you want with your downtime. But when you start to slip, when you don't play well, like Anthony Rendon of the Angels has, he's getting a big paycheck and he's been hurt. He hasn't been anywhere near the player that he was with the Nats before he got there. That's something you're better served keeping under your hat. That you're not going to bring attention to that. Fletcher in year 12, if he wants to go ahead and say that, guess what? He was the most consistent player on Eagle defense. You can continue to be the most consistent player on Eagle defense. Do whatever the hell you want during your downtime, Fletch. That's on you. Go ahead. You get whatever you want out of life. I got no issue with that as long as you're performing. And Fletcher Cox performed again this year. For me, the most consistent player on defense, any position on defense. He's going to be missed. How much will he be missed in a leadership role? The Eagles have the three great veterans who go back to the championship, have played for 4 different coaches, which is amazing. We all know Kelsey and his personality and the way he does his job, and BG is one of the more beloved, outspoken, rah-rah guys that we've had here in Philadelphia, certainly during my 30 years. Fletch is a little bit more reserved. He's not as out there as either Kelsey or Brandon Graham, but doesn't mean that he's not a leader in that clubhouse. They're going to lose his talent and skills if he decides to walk away, Johnny Mac. How much are they going to lose on the leadership end?
Yeah, I think it's pretty significant. And that's why, one of the best things about Fletcher's, he's sort of been grooming these guys, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, to take over that leadership role. And that's another part of pro sports. There's no given that you have to do that as a veteran player. Some do and some don't. We know high-profile players at the quarterback position that don't. He does, and he has. So, that tells you what kind of leader he is, even though he might not be as vocal as some other guys. But, yeah, he's a big part of it, and guys look to him. And because he's been such a good player for so long, doesn't take long because it's Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. They look at Fletcher Cox in kind of awe and that type of thing. But I'm glad he said, yeah, we don't know it yet. We're talking about him in the past. Now, I go back to locker cleanout day. I think I said the day after, I don't think Fletcher's coming back. Now, to me, it was weighing between retirement and going somewhere else, but cleaned out his locker. He's never done that before. We just got this, Jordan Davis was talking about him in the past tense. You just got the sense that he wasn't coming back. But I'm also very cognizant of same thing we've been through with Jason Kelsey in a different time frame. Jason's not looking to go anywhere else. It's just about whether he's going to retire or come back. But if you get him the day after the season or the Adam Schefter report in the locker room, yeah, he always wants to retire. And then he changes his mind. He recharges. He's beaten up. In this case, unfortunately, you're defeated usually after the last game. There's one team left standing. It hasn't been the Eagles over the past couple of years. It's a depressing time. Your body's beaten up. You feel terrible. You're like, I don't want to go through this again as a veteran player. And you say, I'm going to retire. And then you change your mind as you get farther and farther away from that. And as I said, you recharge the batteries, the body starts feeling better. You're away from the locker room. You start missing the guys. You start missing the cafeteria if you're Jason Kelsey. And you change your mind. Like that to me is something that people just kind of gloss over. Like it's some kind of weird. Think about all the listeners and viewers. Think about your own life. How many times you change your mind? People change their minds. And from one standpoint to the next, and that's why until Fletcher says it, and Jeremy left that pretty open-ended, sometime in the off season, he's expected to retire. I think you brought up last week, he might pull the Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh and say, you know what? I don't want to deal with training camp. I'll see if there's a contender that needs a defensive tackle. He might do that.
Is Fletch one of those guys, though? Because I think incumbent on that is some guys just don't want to go through the work. Some guys, they don't want to go through the practice. Some guys live to practice and kind of get bummed out when they have shortened practices. We know that Jason Kelsey has taken advantage of relaxed practices over the last couple of years, and we should be thankful for it because I think it's extended his career. He's on the record saying so. If they didn't let me take practices off, I don't know that I could still put my body through this. Is Fletcher that kind of guy? Is he one of those who really appreciates the downtime?
I don't think he is adverse to working hard. I think it's a matter of at this stage of his career, he doesn't need it. And it gets monotonous and it gets boring. I remember talking to Chris Long about individual drills. He's like, man, I wish we could just kill those and go right to team drills and 7-on-7s, what have you. He's like, God, it's just so every day the same thing. He's a veteran player. He knows how to do it. He knows. But guess what? The young players need it. So you can't say, oh, we're going to scrap this and for veteran players. So I think it's just one of those standpoints of it gets boring for those guys and it is a grind. And, if you could fast forward to the regular season as quickly as possible, I think it's helpful for them. But it's really hard to do that because the young players need it and they need it a lot, and they need to work with the veteran players. So, it's one of those things, a necessary evil from their standpoint.
It's funny as I ask you the question, it made me think. Now, my playing days, we're 40 plus years removed from high school, grade school, high school basketball player. And we won a couple championships, but a lot of, no matter what, your season ends at some point. I always missed practice more than I missed games. When the off season kicked in, I actually missed practice more. I loved hanging with my teammates and working on stuff. And the games were great. I didn't like, oh my God, glad I don't have to play any games anymore. No, I miss the games too. But I actually missed practice more than I mid the games when the off season kicked in.
Well, that's part of it.
Maybe I'm just a weirdo.
The camaraderie, the locker room. Kelsey talks about that all the time. But, when you're beaten up, and
yeah, I was 14, 15, 16 years old. I wasn't beaten up yet. That wasn't one of my issues.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that's funny. So Fletcher Cox may or may not be an Eagle going forward. We're gonna have to wait, but at least there are some rumors out there. There's some other juicy rumors about the Eagles, one including they are going to be in need of safety help. Kevin Byard, shockingly, Kevin Byard released that. What was that about 10:02 on Friday again? Shortly after Mac got off the Iron Birds 365.
Well kept secret. Kevin Byard
wasn't shocking when it happened. Everyone knew that was coming. But was he talked to? Did they try and restructure? Did they just say, thank you, please turn in your swipe card so you can't get into the building? However it came down, Eagles need safety help. Could one be a return Eagle safety help guy? We'll talk about that with our first guest. That would be Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, our early Monday guy. He's up next here on Birds 365.
Go for the poles and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 364 with Mac and Mac. When you do it on Monday mornings early, you get Jeff Kerr from CBSSports.com, who jumps on with us all the time. Jeff Kerr, we were just talking about Fletcher Cox and a report that he's probably going to retire at some point during this offseason, kind of open-ended. If that is the case, how difficult is it going to be to replace Fletcher Cox, both from a production standpoint and a leadership standpoint on the Eagles?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I'll just say this with Fletcher Cox. I feel like he was the voice a lot of people turned to when things were going bad, and he definitely isn't one to shy away from his opinion, which I think the Eagles will miss in that regard. He did have a good year last year, and I heard personally that if they would have won the Super Bowl the year before, he might have done this a year earlier. So I was always wondering if 2023 was going to be his last year, if he just signed like a one-year deal just to finish his career in Philly and try to get a second Super Bowl ring. And he still might have ambitions of that based on last year. It might be somewhere else, but Fletcher Cox to me, and John, you were with me that day on Locker Room Cleanout Day. It just seemed like to me he was talking like a player who was kind of on his way out.
Yeah, and more so Jordan Davis was talking like a player who knew Fletcher Cox was on his way out. So I think, and he cleaned out his locker, which he's never done before. So the assumption of, he just wanted to do some spring cleaning, didn't match to previous years. So there's certain guys who know they aren't going to be back and they get the heck out of there. And there's certain guys that know they're going to be back and they keep their stuff around. And that was the first time Fletcher turned in that direction. So I think it was a clear indication that he was thinking about it, certainly. And as I brought up with Jody in the first segment, I don't know if you heard yet, but people can change their minds. They can always change their minds. And he could want to, sort of do what Linval Joseph has done and Dominic Sue in the past. He can go that route and say, I don't want to go through training camp. I don't need that nonsense. And if he could do it here, he can do it somewhere else. And we'll see how it shakes out. But the Eagles almost have to start moving toward Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and build the foundation. And I think that's Vic Fangio's sort of job description. Hey, Vic, go build this defense around these two particular guys. That's the foundation. And if you have to do that, well, there's less playing time available for Fletcher Cox. And I think he's a proud guy as well. I'm not sure he wants to accept that Brandon Graham role. So it's kind of a tough situation for the Eagles as well.
I would agree there. So I've always said the Eagles have to get younger. Now, granted, there were always some exceptions, and the core four is one of them. But yeah, I would agree with you. Fletch is a proud guy. He knows he can still start in this league, play at a high level. And if he wants to play for another organization will take him, and they'll take him to be the player that he is. But if Fletch says to himself, you know what, I'm good playing 12 years with one team. I've accomplished all I want to accomplish. I'm ready for my next phase of life. Who's to blame him? I mean, I still think it's 50-50 with Jason Kelce right now. By the way, I'm expecting a decision this week on that.
Yeah, Travis is in town, evidently. So,
all right. One more Fletcher question before we move on. And we know he's got a pretty big fan in the organization, the general manager, who had a picture of him up in on his wall in his office, that Howie's a big Fletcher guy. And I'm not saying Howie should rethink his entire cap structure just to make Fletcher, but how much sales job do you think Howie does to try and talk Fletcher out of it? John, if you've said it once, you've said it 4 times so far this morning. I think you're right. Fletcher could change his mind. All right, so he's leaning toward retirement. How hard should Howie Roseman try and make him change his mind? Talk him out of it. Say, we need you. We have to have you. You're a key guy in this locker room. Don't walk. Please, Fletcher, don't go. How much should Howie Roseman be trying to do that for getting Fletcher Cox back?
Oh, are you talking to me or John there?
Both. But Jeff, you're the guest. We'll let you go first.
You can go ahead, John.
Look, if he wanted to come back for 1 year, $5 million, I think he'd be back. I don't think he wants to be back. So it's kind of like,
so you think Howie should insult him with a $5 million offer off the season that he had?
I think it's just, do you want to pay your fourth defensive tackle $10 million a year? I think the answer to that is no. Now, does he deserve to be the fourth defensive tackle? I think the answer to that is no. But again, you're trying to serve two masters as a GM. And it's not only about this year, it's about 2 years, 3 years down the road. And I think they want to kickstart. I mean, soon you're going to be talking about, Milton Williams has been here for a while. And you got to start talking about extensions. Is he going to be here? You have to build, you have to get younger, as Jeff said. And I think they are at that point at defensive tackle almost by design. They drafted these guys. They know, and you don't draft guys with premium picks to not play them. Now, if they fail miserably, all right, like Jalen Reagor, then you got to shift course. But these guys haven't failed. They're all pretty good players. You can argue Jordan Davis isn't as good as some people had hoped. I think those people didn't understand what type of player he is, but that's a different conversation. You can talk about Jalen Carter. Well, he wasn't as great in the second half as the first half, but he's pretty damn good in the first half. And you can talk about Milton and say, well, he's not what you expected, but I don't agree with those people. So at what point do you turn the page and say, I drafted these guys, I got to play these guys more?
But here's the reason why I think it's a legitimate question. We're talking about defensive tackle. It's a rotational position. If this was a start or backup question, okay, fine. If you're telling Fletcher he's got to be a backup, you come to the determination you got to get your young guys in there. You're now a backup Fletcher. Yeah, I got reason to walk away if I'm Fletcher Cox and you can try and suck me in for a backup role. No, I'm not doing that. I was the most consistent player on the defense. How much are we changing? How many positions, how many snaps a game are we talking about that much more that you got to give Jordan Davis? And it's not like Jordan Davis and Milwaukee are all going to play 85% of the snaps next year. There's still going to be guys who are going to have to come in and get them off their feet. Why can't it be Fletcher Cox? And instead of them playing 65, 75% of the snaps, they're only paying 60% of the snaps. That's where it's not adding up for me. Time to move on from Fletcher Cox. He's not necessary anymore. Yeah, he is, because the position dictates you got to have someone else.
Well, it is, but that's what I was saying. It is a rotational position, but he's number one in the rotation. So if you look at last year, 721 snaps for Fletcher Cox, 599 for Jalen Carter, 561 for Jordan Davis, 522 for Milton Williams. He's number one. Now he knows, and he's talked about it. They've drafted these guys at best number 3 or number 4. He doesn't want that role. Like Brandon Graham wants that role, accepts that role, understands that role. He's not at the stage where he's saying, oh, I need to play less than these guys.
I look at it as a Bobby Taylor, Torrey Vincent situation from 20 years ago. So Eagles drafted Leo Shepard. They drafted Sheldon Brown early. It's like what John said. You're using these premium picks on these guys, not to just play, but to start. And Bobby and Troy could still play when, granted, Bobby had an injury in 2003, but they could still play and start in the National Football League when they were free agents. And the Eagles said, "What, you guys are on the north side of 30. See you later. We got Lito, we got Sheldon." And they may be looking at precedent right now, like Fletcher Cox. We know you could still play, but it's time. And Leo Shepard became an all-pro, and Sheldon Brown was a good starting cornerback in this league for a long time. And I think we would take that out of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, John.
Yeah, well, Jalen, I mean, like I said, you have to build this deep. You literally have to build this defense on Jalen Carter and his skill set moving forward. That, to me, there's no question about it. And I think the Fletcher, there's no question about it. And, you know, as I said, 599, if 599, and that's what Jalen played last year, if that stays the same, that's a disaster for the Eagles, and or he got hurt. And obviously, I'm not talking about injury, but if he's out there for 17 games, you want him to play more and more and more and get better and better and better. And Fletcher knows this. He talked about it. Look at who they drafted. That's what he said at defensive tackle. I mean, it is what it is. You take somebody with the 13th overall pick, and then the next year you take somebody with the 9th overall pick, they're going to play.
And then you're going to get too. And then you're going to get to the point. How can you? And we're at it now with Jalen Carter. How the heck do you take him off the field?
Because everybody takes defensive tackles off the field.
Not on impact play. Not on impact plays.
Here's what you said, Jeff. Off the field. Are we talking off the field on impact plays or off the field? Are you suggesting to me that Carter should play 95% of the snaps next year for the Eagles?
If he can.
Yeah, if he can, yeah.
Aaron Donald doesn't. Aaron Donald doesn't play 95%.
He's
of
up there.
He's pretty close. I bet he's
very
90.
close. He's very close.
How many interior defensive linemen in the league do you think play 90% of snaps, percentage wise?
Not a lot, but as you know,
but the elite ones do.
And you know, early in Fletcher's career, earlier he was one of those guys who played maybe not 90, but you know, every year almost complaining Jeff Kerr and Jim Schwartz. Jim would say, "Boy, we got to get we got to get those snaps down." And every year he wouldn't, because the key points of the game, you don't want to take him off the field. And that's, you know, great players. And yeah, Aaron's one of those players. You know, it happens with edge rushers too. Like Max Crosby never leaves the field. I mean, you have to have that. You have to have that motor, and you have to have that conditioning, and that's a concern. with
We don't
any
know
of
that
these.
either of those Georgia guys have that yet.
No, we
We
don't.
know they have the talent, but we don't
Yeah.
know that they have that motor and or the desire to be out there 90 to 95%
Yeah.
of the snaps. That's hopeful thinking from an Eagles standpoint.
Yeah. But again, I think the standpoint is you're talking about a proud guy. To me, it's easy. It's easy if Fletcher wanted to accept stepping back and say, all right, you know what? It's their time. I'm going to be the role player. I'm going to be the guy who fills in. I think it would be easy. He'd be back. But I think it's difficult because he can still play. He still wants to play if he does play. And here he sees the landscape. So to me, it's Fletcher's decision. Do you want a lesser role, lesser money, probably? Do you want to go somewhere else, or do you want to retire?
He's a top 50 free agent. He's
Yeah.
going.
Oh, he can play.
Yeah, he's going to get a starter's job somewhere, and probably north of 10 million because that's the going rate. He's a good
Yeah,
player.
and it's only going up with the salary cap. So how do you pay everybody if you're the Eagles? That factors into it as well.
Well, that's the same thing with Hassan Reddick. How do you pay him? Because you need to. Because you need the player. Because the salary cap did go up, and guess what? He deserves to be getting 23, 24, 25 million. If the Eagles decide, well, we can't get to that number, go ahead and replace him. And I say the same thing about Fletcher Cox.
I agree with you, Trey, but my issue always is when I look at those numbers, 30th, 31st, 32nd, 24th, 26th, in major defensive categories, how many of these guys do you really want to keep?
Well, that's fair. The defense was terrible, but
Yeah,
Fletcher Cox.
I'll point my finger at guys like Roby rather than Fletcher Cox and Hassan Reddick as to why.
Oh yeah, but they're not coming back anyway.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree with you. It was kind of like when the Eagles were bad. Again, they were still emerging as a defense, but Hugh Douglas was a good player on the bad defense, and before Jim Johnson straightened everything out, or Brian Dawkins in his early years. Those are the guys you keep. So that's where I would agree with you with the paying Hassan Reddick.
Right. They got to keep Hassan. All right. The other big rumor over the weekend was Eagles could have interest in a reunion with CJGJ. We know when Chauncey Gardner-Johnson left for the Lions, it was just a one-year deal, a good one-year deal. They gave him $8 million, and then he ended up getting hurt on them. So certainly didn't live up to the contract. That's just the luck of the game. Was a playmaker when he's here. The Eagles got very little playmaking out of the safety position this year. But John's there every single day. You're there often enough, Jeff. Kind of a high-maintenance guy. He's not afraid to speak his mind and act up and act out. You got a new defensive grouping as the coaches, the coordinator, and the majority of the coaches underneath them. CJGJ now a better fit, a lesser fit for the Eagles. What would you think about a CJGJ reunion, Jeff?
And by the way, I got to break in, guys. Jason Kelsey, no keg videos this year. I've come to a decision and we'll address it in a press conference this afternoon. So Jason Kelsey's going to, as I mentioned, Travis Kelsey is in town, was doing something. Yeah. I do not think Jason Kelsey's coming back, but we shall see. It's going to happen today, this afternoon.
Thanks, Jason. I'm packing for Vegas today.
No keg videos? Is that the way he specifically?
Yes, that was exactly from Jason.
I actually enjoy this, by the way. He's doing this on his own terms, and not. This isn't like R.I.P. to Chris Mortensen, but I always thought it was cool. Mort was the guy Peyton Manning told, and look, we're going to hold off. I like how Jason's doing this on his own terms, by the way.
Good for him. Yeah, he talk about a guy who deserves it. He gets to call all the shots, and the fact that it seems like he's calling it today. Press conference, said John. So you think something's going to happen down at the Novacare complex?
Yeah, I would think so. Press conference this afternoon. Nothing official from the Eagles yet. I'm sure it'll come soon. But yeah, I would think Jason's big enough that they're not going to do it on Zoom. But who knows? Who knows?
Yeah,
it is a Zoom world. I would hope not.
And while I certainly agree with what Jeff just said, that good on Jason, he gets to make all the calls here, do it when he wants, how he wants. I certainly agree with every single bit of that. It's a bummer. And one of the all-time great Eagles, and I mean all-time great, going back to the beginning of the Steagles, if you so desire.
On the Mount Rushmore. That's what he is. He's on the Mount Rushmore.
Absolutely right. He's on the Eagles Mount Rushmore. Agree with that, John?
Yeah. Boy, well, I got to think about Mount. Obviously,
Steve Van Buren, Chuck Bednarik.
Chuck Bednarik. Yeah, there's a lot of, if you go back, and there's a lot of Hall of Fame players, but he's in the conversation. I would say the only two, no doubt, slam dunks are Reggie and Chuck Bednarik.
Yeah, and B-Dog.
Then you could argue. Well, that's what I'm saying. Then you can argue.
Yeah. B-Dog's definitely in the conversation.
Yeah, he's definitely in the conversation. Any of the Hall of Famers are in the conversation. Tommy McDonald's got to be in the conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in the Hall of Fame, you're in the Hall of Fame. But yeah, Jason will be in that conversation. And either way, he's a great Eagle. So if you want to boil it down to 4, I don't know if I can go there, but he's certainly in the conversation, and that's good. That's really good, especially coming from a 6th-round pick. We just went through the combine, and, some of his testing athletically back in the day, as people have kind of caught up with it. Now people look at Jason Kelce's testing. You didn't know. Nobody knew except Howard Mudd. Howard Mudd was the one who said, "Oh, he's going to be a starter." Howie loves telling that story. And he's like, great. He's going to be a starter. No, right now, as a rookie, he's going to be a starter. And Howie's like, settle down. And ultimately turned into that type of player.
He plays a pretty good center here, too, in Jamal Jackson.
Yeah.
Wasn't a bad player.
Yeah, so he is a special player until it's official. But, yeah. And nobody. We talk about all this angst and CJ, I'm sorry, I had to interrupt you there, Jody.
No,
and we talk about players, having difficulty playing in Philadelphia. I don't think anybody has been understands Philadelphia better than Kelce. I don't think any certainly in the modern era, there's never been an athlete who understands Philadelphia better than Jason Kelce.
I always thought Jason grew as a person during his 13, 14 years here. He was criticized to no end early on in his career. Those early in the Chip Kelly years, where he was any good, whether he was, and you knew he was a good player because the tape told you he was a good player, but he never went after anybody on that. It's like, okay, he took his lumps, whatever, always said he had to get better. And then everything just started to click. And when everything started to click, it was funny. That was the year they won the Super Bowl. That was the year where he just kind of, I don't want to say he had a 180 because I think he was popular at that point. But he just went to the other stratosphere when he decided to one-up Chase Utley. I really wanted to ask him that question in his career. And maybe he'll answer it afterwards. I'm like, did you watch Chase Utley's parade speech when the Phillies won and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to top this. I'm going to find some way to top this. And I don't think anyone's ever going to top it.
Yeah, I agree with that because you'll never have anybody who can tap into what he was able to tap into. And even if they do win again, you're probably not going to have somebody who understands the city like he does. And by the way, we were talking about this last week. I forget why we brought it up, Jody, but he's also really good. That factors into it as well because I brought up Chris Long. Chris Long, had that same kind of swag at the end of his career, winning a Super Bowl. He had the fur coat on, had the interesting personality you see in his podcast, but he was a role player here. He was a role player. You can only go so far, even though he's a really good role player. You can only go so far. Jason's an all-pro. Right. And he ended his career all-pro, year after year after year. Again, I'm talking about him in the past tense. He hasn't retired yet, but all indications. Yeah. So I think you got to be really good as well. And he's really good. And that factors into it in a big way. You know, you don't have Allen Iverson talking at his level of stardom or anybody, you know, people like Bryce Harper, but not to that level. Not to that level.
I feel like he was on that Chase Utley level, but he's definitely he's no doubt a Hall of Famer. There's no question. It's when he gets in, not if. And but like when when and I know I'm comparing athletes here, but when Chase was in his prime, you knew he was probably going to the Hall of Fame, and then injuries kind of put that on the back burner. But Jason just got better, and
it's kind of amazing. Ended his career.
It is. At 36 years old, he's the best center in football.
Yeah.
Now it's probably going to be Creed Humphrey for the next decade, but
he's carrying on the couple bad snaps a game though tradition. Creed Humphrey.
Oh yeah, well, he did it in the Super Bowl. He
yeah.
Did
He's terrible. He's terrible with the snaps in the Super Bowl. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, it's you know,
and that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why I thought Jason Kelsey might stay. And again, I didn't watch the all 22. Just watching it as a regular fan on TV, like everybody else. Jason Kelsey played badly against the Bucs in the final game of the year.
He did. He did.
Do you really want to go out on that note? Do you want to be the guy who walks away playing your worst game of the year and the biggest game of the year in the playoffs? I thought Jason might have to look in the mirror on that one and go, yeah, I can't do it. I can't walk away after that game. Everybody wants to walk away on their own terms. And if he does make that announcement today, more power to him. He absolutely deserves it. He played lousy in his last game. I didn't think he'd want to walk away after that.
This final game, did he average like negative yards per carry or something?
Well, you know, I always say these things can go in two different ways. I think, you know, I get it from the standpoint of what Jody's saying, but all right, so you had a bad game and you want to go through the grind of 17 more in the playoffs, hopefully to make up for one game. But you can look at it as like, man, I'm sick of dealing with people like Vita Vea. I'm 36 years old. You can look at it and say it's a wake up call and saying, I don't want to do this anymore. And we'll see which way it goes. But, you know, combine talk, I always say, you know, everybody makes a big deal out of so-and-so met with so-and-so. I always point out, and especially the top 30 visits, because they're more important, but they could also go in a negative direction. So everyone, the Eagles must have interest in so-and-so because they're going to bring him in on a top 30
They must
visit.
not have interest in that person.
They might be trying to rule him out, or they might rule him out when he's here, like Darius Geis. Everybody remember Darius Geis? So he came up and everybody was saying, the Eagles are having him on a top 30. They're interested in Darius Geis. Well, he showed up and he's arguing with Deuce Staley, and they said, hey, here's the door. Don't let it hit you in the ass. And they ruled him out. So everything can go in two different directions. It can go like Jody went and said, you know what? I don't want to go out like this. Or he might have an epiphany and say, well, these guys aren't going anywhere. And this might be the end of the road.
Yeah, and you think about the visits, John, maybe one of my favorite stories ever. I know crossing over sports, but I remember interviewing, it wasn't Don Nelson, it was Don Nelson Jr., who became the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, and got it directly from Cuban. When Dirk Nowitzki was drafted, the Mavs specifically did not bring Dirk Nowitzki in for a visit because they knew they wanted him. They had already seen him. They didn't want to convince themselves out of it. They wanted to keep it under wraps that they loved Dirk Nowitzki, and they hoped Nowitzki fell to them. And, oh, by the way, Nowitzki was picked before them. They immediately traded their first-round pick, tractor trailer plus another pick to get up to get him. Oh, they had to have Dirk Nowitzki. They didn't bring him in just because of that. So it's a great point that you bring up, John. Oh, people read into who you brought in for your 30 visits or whatever. Sometimes it's a misdirect that you bring a guy in because you don't really want him, that a guy you really want you won't invite because you don't want to show that you're interested in him. So it goes a couple of different ways. Man, this is turning into a bummer of a day. Yeah, we
Yeah,
start talking about Fletcher Cox retiring. Now we're adding to the mix. It looks like Jason Kelsey's retiring. It was that Super Bowl win in 2017, really only 5 years ago today. All of a sudden today, it now seems like a
6
decade
years.
and a half ago.
Yeah, well, it was a decade and a half ago. Now that whatever Jason decides to do, one of my favorite debates every offseason is the best brother combo in NFL. And boy, do you get the Manning stand so pissed off when you mentioned how dare the. I'm like, oh, hold on a second. Jason might be one of the best centers of all time. Travis might end up being one of the best tight ends of all time. Last time I checked, Eli ain't the greatest quarterback of all time.
No, I'm not. Eli's, yeah, that's going to be a conversation we've had many times, but Eli Manning is not a Hall of Fame quarterback. I think Jody's on board with me there. You can't be a 500 quarterback with 2 runs and be a Hall of Fame quarterback. You can't.
They're the worst team to ever win the Super Bowl at 9-7. They shouldn't. I always argue this.
I give them all the credit in the world.
No, I give them all the credit in the world too.
And same thing I would argue with Eagles fans. I would argue with Eagles fans about Nick Foles because you have this weird. I mean, the guy deserves all the credit for that run, but he's not. And it's silly that some have brought it up, but they've used that term Hall of Fame. He's not even close to being a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's not a great starting quarterback, as he's proven over a long career. He had a couple nice runs. He had the 27-2, and they were weirdly unbelievable. So and I've always compared him to Vinnie Johnson. Boy,
that's an old school.
Yeah, the old NBA player, the microwave, who, on a particular day, if Vinnie Johnson was hot, give me Vinnie Johnson, man. He's going to put up 40. But over the long haul, give me Isaiah Thomas. Consistent greatness, bang, bang, bang. And that's the difference. But yeah, Eli's not a Hall of Famer. Travis is already. Jason is going to be. Yeah, you can make the argument the Kelceys are better than the Mannings, but
the Mannings 10 combined all pro first team pro selections.
By the way, I'm Jody's probably heard me say this. Peyton, now that's a different category. That's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I argue the greatest regular season quarterback of all time because of that consistency. But yeah, Eli, no, he's not holding his water in that family.
All right. So again, this is not official. John gave you was that a Kelsey tweet? You're taking that directly off his
That
Twitter
was a Kelsey tweet. Press conference sets 1:00. 1:00.
Oh, it is. You got the time now too. All right. So
Yes.
we know where McMullen's going after the show's over and done with, heading into the South Philadelphia. I did see this over the weekend, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together in my own mind. Maybe I should have. Maybe this individual did. 'Tis the season to be mocked. And when I say mock, I'm not talking about putting someone down. I'm talking about drafts that everyone's got their own mock. You got a mock draft out yet, Kerr? Do you have a mock draft out yet?
I do one mock draft and it's a joke. I don't do mock trades. I just go, this player would be the best fit on this team. And everybody goes, well, you're wrong. I'm like, well, maybe I am, but that's how I do a mock draft. I do one a year and it's in April.
And it's in April. Good that you haven't jumped in. But others have. That's their job. That's their gig. That's what they have to do. So they got to do it. You could probably go out on the internet, take 45 minutes, and you can find 40 different mock drafts if you want. Then there's certainly everybody's done
it. As someone who gets chart beat for CBS and knows a lot of the analytics and stuff, they're popular. People like mock drafts.
People love to check out mock drafts. And so if there's probably, if I'm just using round number 20 that go round 1 through 7, there's 50 that go round 1. So everybody's got a first round mock. And then the closer you get to the draft, everybody stretch it out and go full 7 rounds. I did see a mock draft this weekend that at number 22 had the Philadelphia Eagles drafting not a quarterback, not an edge rusher in case Hassan Reddick isn't here, not a offensive tackle, which John has leaned on and said, Jordan, look at the depth at this offensive tackle. They're going to get a good one.
This
Number
offensive line
22.
class is loaded, by the way.
At the
Absolutely
top,
loaded.
man. It's unbelievable. That's why, but I say, Howie might target somebody. He might trade up. Quinyon Mitchell alerts, but I'll probably have to go up to get a player like that. So if he's forced to sit, remember, I always say it takes two to tango. Nobody realized, well, he'll just trade. You needed somebody to trade with.
Yeah, this
Right.
isn't Madden where the CPU just accepts your trade.
Exactly.
So we know what the Eagles roster is right now. So there's been 3 or 4 positions that have been most likely that the Eagles are going to take guy. It all depends on valuation of the draft that day goes in front of all of that stuff in corner, tackle, edge. If you're going to be forced to trade Hassan Reddick, they had the Eagles at number 22 taking a center. Maybe they knew ahead of time that this was going to be the Jason Kelsey decision on Monday when they put this mock out. And I didn't check the date. Could have been mocked yesterday. I saw it yesterday. Could have been 2 days before, 4 years, a week and a half, 10 days, 2 months before. I don't know. I wasn't planning on having to replace Jason Kelsey. Jackson Pepper Johnson from Oregon is, in some people's minds, the number 1 center in this draft. Howie Roseman likes to talk about drafting in the trenches. When was the last time Howie took a center with a first-round pick? I don't remember that. I don't think it's happened.
They took a center in the second round.
Second is different than first,
Yeah.
is it not? I don't know that they're going to go there, but if Jason Kelly, you're watching Jason Kelly walk out the door. No, you got Juergens to move there, but then you need a guard. Maybe you liked what Juergens did at guard this year. Any chance they take a center with their first round pick, boys?
I would bet more they would take a tackle and switch him to guard than that.
Domino effect. What's Jeff Stoutland's opinion about moving guys from position to position to position, John?
Well, he doesn't like moving parts.
That's what I'm saying.
Now they have a plan in place, and I think that plan is they're not going away from it. And Cam Juergens is going to be the center next season, and then you got to figure out right guard. And they already have a guy in house that they drafted to be the right guard. But I don't think that they're going to say, "Oh, Tyler Steen," they're going to give him the job. He got one opportunity against Dallas. He didn't play well. I think he'll get an opportunity, but you might see them sign a free agent, mid-level free agent guard, and sort of set up a competition with Tyler Steen. But I don't think they're going away from Cam Juergens. I think they have a lot of
cool, or they could be cool and just pay Kevin Zeitler whatever he wants.
Yeah, I don't think they're going that way.
They're not going to do that.
I think they need to get younger. I think they want to get younger. So it's about, we talked about it with the defensive tackles. I think that's the case with the offensive line, trying to get Cam Juergens involved, trying to get Tyler Steen involved. Yeah, I don't think they're changing. I don't think they're looking to say, oh, we'll keep Cam Juergens at guard and draft a center. And plus the value, they don't value that position, interior offensive line, as much as offensive tackle. There are certain positions they'll draft in the first round. We all know. And there's certain positions they won't unless there's a historic player. Is he the historic type of prospect like Christian McCaffrey is at running back? I don't think so. So, yeah, I doubt that, but I see why people would do that, and they're one of their 97 mock drafts.
Right.
John McMullen, do you do mock drafts?
I do one like you, one first round mock draft in April, one and only, 1.0 and only.
I always call it the wrong mock draft.
Unfortunately, I do a couple Eagles-centric mock drafts during the process, which I hate, but people love them. So, and they love to complain. People love it. That's all they do. You're an idiot when you project. A couple years ago, I got Cam Juergens right. I didn't get Cam Juergens right because I thought they should take him, or because I thought he was a fit because I got some good intel that they were going to take Cam Jurgens if he was there. And I got killed. I got crucified. Nobody apologized. By the way, I rarely do this, but I got to bring this. Someone on the chat said, Jody and Jeff, I embarrassed myself and lost all credibility by not claiming Eli Manning was a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Really?
Embarrassed
I
and lost
don't
all
think
credibility.
you're alone in the camp there.
Oh my God.
John?
234 starts, NFL starts, pretty large sample size.
Okay,
117 wins.
This is my stupid argument for Eli. If his last name wasn't Manning and if his name was John McMullen, is he a Hall of Famer? In his
6 last 7 seasons as an NFL quarterback, he had 1 season with a winning record.
Yeah, and I think the very distinguished panel of those who vote for the Hall of Fame, who Jeff Kerr just disparaged. I can't believe you went there. I'm
just throwing out a name, and I was going to say Jody McDonald, but John McMullen.
No. You can use my name, use John's name, use anybody's name. Doesn't matter. If you think that the guys who vote for the Hall of Fame, who I think take their job very seriously, and some of the most astute football writers, journalists are going to go, oh, I got to vote for Eli because he's a Manning. And no, that's just dumb. I don't believe that's the case. He won 2 Super Bowls. He beat an undefeated Patriot team. The Giants defense, between you and I, more so beat that undefeated Patriots team in the Super Bowl than Eli did, even though they gave him the MVP. How the hell they did that, I don't know. No, Eli, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but I don't think the debate comes down to, is it because he's a Manning or not? It's because what you just give his regular season record as
117 and 117 as a starting quarterback. Dead 500s.
That's where the debate comes in. He's a 500 quarterback. Do 500 quarterbacks get in the Hall of Fame? I don't care if his last name's Manning, Elway, Marino. Doesn't matter. If you're a 500 quarterback, you shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
No. And by the way, he deserves all the credit in the world for those 2 runs. Now, you'll say those 2 teams have won. The Giants teams, it was their defensive line both times who really dominated the game. But he played well. I'm not trying to take away from him. He played well in those runs. Those runs don't make him a Hall of Fame quarterback. It's interesting. The other guy with 2 Super Bowl rings, and it's eerie. But the other guy with 2 Super Bowl rings that's not in the Hall of Fame is Jim Plunkett, who shouldn't be, by the way. And Jim Plunkett started 144 games. Guess what his record is, guys?
What?
72 and 72.
Really?
Is that not eerie?
Right on the money.
Is that not eerie? But yeah, they're not Hall of Fame quarterbacks, but they had great runs and they won 2 Super Bowls.
And
the Super Bowl
was a really
thing.
Good quarterback too for a couple years, but you're right. Overall, the body of work says no.
Yeah,
Plunkett played for some bad Patriot teams.
Oh yeah,
he couldn't have lifted and won games with no matter.
And
what.
by the way, it's not Eli's fault that Eli played with some bad Giants teams at the end, but he wasn't elevating them, to say the least. He's a solid starting quarterback who had a couple good runs. There's nothing wrong with that, but he's not a Hall of Famer. It's not Hall of Fame. And people overrate that. And Jody knows this because I've said it, Jeff, and I know we've gotten off on this tangent. We got to let you go. You got to pack for Vegas.
Yeah.
But, when John Elway was losing Super Bowls, he was a great quarterback. When he was winning Super Bowls, he was a complimentary player. That was Terrell Davis's team. And he was able to get over the hump. They had a very good roster. Same with Peyton Manning, his 2nd Super Bowl. He was terrible that season.
He won great.
Kind of amazing they won. And he was great for all those years and wasn't winning. He's only got 1. He's only got 1. Then he won his 2nd, his worst season. People way overrate those rings. Way overrated.
Somehow we got off on a Manning tangent. Well,
Well,
brothers, that's
it's
how it
my
all
fault
I got
because I brought up the
insulted.
You
Kelsey.
did.
lost
You had to go to the brother conversation. It's all your fault, Kerr. Jason
Yeah, it's
Kelsey's
all my-
retiring. Fletcher Cox is thinking about retiring. We're talking about Eli Manning as a Hall of Fame.
I didn't lose
Shame on
some
all
of
of
my.
us.
I didn't lose some of my credibility. I lost all of my credibility.
all right.
All of
Hey,
it.
you're out, McMullen. You're out.
Forget about a silly streamer who's commenting. We appreciate those who do jump in. We really appreciate Jeff Kerr when he joins us each and every single Monday. Are you going down to South Philly or are you going to Vegas? Which one you doing, Kerr?
Well, I gotta go down to South Philly to go to Vegas anyway. So
There you go.
Go down
Smart. You
South
get
Philly.
right from the Kelsey retirement to the plane. That's the Jeff Kerr.
By the
we know
way,
and
what are
love.
you doing in Vegas? I didn't ask. We got to
I'm
get that.
bowling, believe it or not. I'm
Oh,
gonna
sure,
go
no.
get beat by pros this week.
When in doubt, Jeff Kerr's bowling. JK, always a pleasure, buddy. Thanks. That's Jeff
Sounds
Kerr
great.
from
Thank you.
CBS
Thanks,
Sports here
bud.
with us on Birds 360.
Sorry, I got a RSVP for Jason's presser because it's going to be a zoo.
All right,
So I
we'll
got to
let-
do these things on the air.
We'll let John do that. Meanwhile, Birds fans, we've got a chance for you to take part in a great deal. Right now, here's your chance to save up to 40% on your car insurance, and you can do so with one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call one of the two managing partners, either Jim or Fran. They'll both help you out. Tell them you're a friend of JAKIB Sports and also Birds 365.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Delval Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Mac here with Young Birds 365. Today could end up being a very bittersweet day. John saw the notification while we were talking to Jeff Kerr that Jason Kelsey took to Twitter to say, no keg videos this year, scheduling a press gathering today, details to follow. Hey, I hope that listen, I don't need a keg. I don't want a keg. I'm adding another year to the calendar, and I don't know that the keg would be good for my prep for the upcoming football season. Could happen that way. Chances are that's not going to be the case, that Jason Kelsey is officially going to retire today, that his brother Travis is in town. Don't know if they'll do a live New Heights podcast or what, but there's a good chance that Jason Kelsey is going to announce his retirement today, and that's unfortunate. He will forever be remembered as one of the greatest Eagles of all time. It's not going to change the legacy of Jason Kelsey that he's walking away at this stage. At least it doesn't for me, may for some others. Most immediate reaction needs to be, what kind of effect does this have on the Eagles for the 2024 season coming up? Jason Kelsey was still Pro Bowl, all-pro level player this year. We always talk about add another age on account. When does the drop-off come? When do you start to see reduction? What the hell happened to James Bradbury? Because he got 365 days older. All of a sudden, he got incompetent. Stuff happens. Well, other than that final game against Tampa, and I don't think that was the reason why. I don't think Jason Kelsey got old the last week of the season against the Bucs. He's still a top-level center compared to all other center levels in the NFL. And it's just another hole the Eagles have to fill, John. That's not good.
No, it's never. When you have to replace a player like that, it's always going to be difficult. And, we all, what are the odds? We're talking about a future Hall of Fame center. And breaking news all over the place. Mike Evans re-signing with the Buccaneers. Didn't see that coming. So
he did resign.
He is going to resign, with the Bucs. But with Jason Kelsey, I mean the likelihood you follow up a Hall of Fame player with another Hall of Fame player, the odds aren't good.
Unless you're the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, unless you're the Green Bay
Packers.
Packers.
That doesn't happen anywhere else other than in Green Bay at kind of key position.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and the odds are against you, and that's why, it's always difficult for the player that replaces a legend. The old adage: you don't want to be the guy who replaces the legend; you want to be the guy who replaces the guy who replaces the legend,
right?
Because you don't want to have that pressure. And that'll be Cam Jurgens' pressure. And is he going to be Jason Kelsey? No, but that doesn't mean he can't be a really solid player. And I talked about it, whether Jason returns or not. I expect the Eagles to have a top 10 offensive line in this league because they're still going to have Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. And they'll figure out the rest. That's better than most teams. So you have to look at it from that standpoint. But anytime you lose a player like that, it's difficult. And, but they've been ready for this, and they I don't know how many heir apparents are we through now?
Right.
Landon Dickerson was drafted to be his heir apparent. Isaac Seumalo was drafted to be
Isaac first into Landon, into Jurgens. So not only have they been ready for it, they've been overly prepared for it, as a matter of fact, but it hadn't happened. Now it's actually happened. If it happens again, we might be putting the cart before the horse here. It's good on the Eagles that they have been prepared and ready, and that's just good organizational strength. You don't get a hit out of left field and not be ready to move when something like this happens. But when it does happen, I'm sorry, it hurts, and it's going to be difficult. Howie Roseman's got work to do. We said it as soon as they lost to the Bucs. Okay, now it's Howie season. Howie, you need to improve this roster. This team's got to get better. When Jason Kelsey walks away, it's just something more you have to do during this offseason. You only got so much. You only got so many draft picks, which we still don't even know. When does that come down? Does that come down this week? The official allocation of compensatory draft picks?
Yeah, I believe it was March. I'll look it up. I think it was March 10th last year. So yeah, it might
Coincide
happen
with
this
the
week.
beginning of the NFL year?
Yeah,
Do they
it
do
might
it before, during?
a little bit before last year. So typically they stick to the same schedule. Um, so
I don't even know that. There's people that are speculating when could be some have even gone so far as to say exactly what pick it's going to be. If they get it right, I'll give them all the credit in the world because I still don't understand how you figure out what kind of draft picks, compensatory draft pick to get. Eagles have 8 picks this year. They got more than 8.
March 9th was when they did it last year. March 9th.
Okay.
So it's coming up soon, most likely.
And we'll find out exactly where those draft picks are. But they only have 8 draft picks. Not like they got 12 draft picks to fill in all these holes that the Eagles now have. And Jason Kelsey hole was one that we knew could very well be the case, hoping that it wasn't the case. I did a 180 on this after the final game of the year when everyone was just writing Jason Kelsey off. I said, can we at least wait? Can we give him a minute to breathe? Already bro hugged his teammates because he knew it was at least a possibility. Let's see what when he did that Chris Long podcast, and Chris was asking him questions about the team, and he kept saying the Eagles, the Eagles, the Eagles, the Eagles, the Eagles, rather than we. In previous years during the offseason, when Jason was sitting on the fence, I'm pretty sure I remember him saying we. He didn't say we. He said the Eagles. And to me, that was kind of a tip-off. He's really thinking about walking away this year, and we'll find out later on this afternoon. I know it's the offseason, but if I'm Jason Kelsey's teammate and I'm living here in the Philadelphia area, I make sure I get my rear end down there to the NovaCare complex today at 1 o'clock. You got to salute this guy if he's going out the door for the last time. I know Eagles spread across the country. It's the offseason. You get out of Dodge. You go back to where you come from. But there are a whole bunch of Eagles that have made the Delaware Valley their home. What kind of turnout do you expect today for Kelsey?
I don't know. We're going to see how it's set up. Obviously, just because it's last minute to us doesn't mean it's last minute to them.
That's true.
And I thought for a while the Eagles probably knew what was going to happen. Adam Schefter's reports. He didn't report that because players weren't saying it. The players thought that Jason was going to retire. And again, as I've said about 100 times during the show, everybody can change their mind. He's changed his mind in the past, so you can hold out hope. But it was pretty clear. And go back to Jordan Mailata. You talk about Jordan's like, there's no way he's coming back, and because he knew, basically. So it's been a while. They probably known a while, so we'll see how it shakes out. But I do think that obviously Travis being in town is not coincidental. I was doing some other stuff, but it was not coincidental. So he'll certainly be there. I expect certain guys, as you mentioned, to live around the area will probably be there. But we'll see. We'll see. When Jalen Hurts' contract came down, his agent was there and there were a couple guys in the back, and a lot of times they don't want to, make themselves known. So it's more of just doing it behind the scenes than sitting in the auditorium with us goofballs in the media.
Yeah, but did you not agree a retirement is different than a contract signing?
Well, sure. Yeah. I just meant that's the last sort of major
okay.
press
Last
conference.
time you had someone that would even
Yeah.
potentially include a teammate.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
But this one, just me, I'm giving my personal opinion. If have been Jason Kelsey's teammate, whether it's a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, I'm going to get my rear end down to the complex today because I want to make sure Jason Kelsey knows how much he's going to be missed individually for each of his teammates and more collectively for the entire city of Philadelphia, above and beyond the Eagles organization. All right, let's take a quickie timeout. Rob Motti scheduled to join us, lead NFL national writer for the Associated Press. Philly guy. He covered Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey for a lot of years here in Philly before he became the national guy from Associated Press and took his act down to Florida. Yeah, Marty Man was here in Philadelphia for many a year covering the Birds and Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox. Looking forward to talking to Rob Marty next here on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
EAGLES. Eagles.
This is Birds 365, and this is one of those days we're going to have to circle on the calendar. Episode number 715 could be the day we found out that Jason Kelsey was stepping away from the Philadelphia Eagles. And we got a guy who's got a damn good perspective on Mr. Kelsey to join us today. That would be Rob Marty, the lead NFL writer for the Associated Press. How many years you cover Kelsey here in town, Marty?
Oh, man. Since he was drafted and all the way until
Oh, I guess Marty Man's having a sound issue. We got you back, Rob. Yay or nay? No, it looks like his computer's freezing up on him.
Bring him down and bring him back up, Zander. But yeah, Rob's a great guy to have because he's, he was here day one. Jason Kelsey, and I told that story about Howard Mudd telling Howie Roseman right away, we got a starting player, this guy's going to be a leader of the team. This guy, and Howie was thinking, in a couple of years, and he's like, no, right now. And yeah, it was, and that's why, one of the things about Jason, and again, it's not official, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope everybody comes back and craps on me and says, I think he's going to retire. But one of the things Jason said when the report broke, when he after the season, after the game in Tampa, was that he wanted to go out on his own terms, and he wanted to give the people credit. And you'll hear that name, I'm sure, 100% sure. Howard Mudd, you will hear that name be one of the people he thanks immensely, as will Jeff Stoutland, who has done, as we all know, a tremendous job with this offensive line. And Jason Kelce became a consistent all-pro player later in his career. Nobody knows that better than Rob, who handles the all-pro voting. So it looks like it's the end for Jason Kelce. What more can you say about him? I don't think there's ever been an athlete, Rob, and you know this better because you covered every sports in Philadelphia. I don't think there's ever been an athlete that got Philadelphia better than Jason Kelce.
Yeah, he's up there. Bryce Harper is certainly up there too as well, I think. But Jason more so because he kind of fits right into, lives there, is always involved in the community, is going to the different sporting events around town, whether it's Sixers, Flyers, Phillies. And he really is that one athlete that is more Philly product, certified first ballot Hall of Famer. I would anticipate that he would be a first, but he doesn't have to wait to get into Canton. It'll be 5 years from now that he'll be in Canton, and we can all look forward to what's going to be an epic speech up there in the gold jacket. But this is a guy who's going to be very difficult for the Eagles to replace on the football field for sure too as well. So you think about everything that Jason has brought to this team since he came to Philly, what he means from a leadership standpoint, what he means to the organization from what he's been able to do on and off the field. I think it's going to be a tremendous, tremendous loss for the Philadelphia Eagles, but he'll be around, and he'll certainly be around, and he'll be, I'm sure he's going to dive right into some media opportunities.
Yeah, has already met with most of the broadcast outlets before he ever officially got around to announcing a retirement. So I think Jason will be just fine if we're worried about Jason. I'm not worried at all about Jason. I'm worried about the Eagles going forward. And why don't we just go ahead and annoy every single Eagle fan who's streamed into us right now? Is there any chance that this is a domino effect, that Kelce walks away, so Fletcher goes, yeah, I don't need this stuff anymore. I think I'll call it a career too. And maybe even Brandon Graham going, I talked to Kelce, and he talked about how his body is just beaten to hell. And truth be told, my body is beaten to hell. And could we see a mass defection of the Eagle championship veterans from that Super Bowl from 2017?
Yeah, I think so. When I spoke to Fletcher a little bit less than a month ago at the Super Bowl, he said that he hadn't come to a decision. He didn't want to make an impulsive decision on coming back. And what I thought was interesting, guys, is he cited that the health injuries, physical injuries, and some of the things that we didn't know about that he was going through. But he also Fletcher talked about the importance of his mental health. And he said, whether it's year 1 or year 12 or year 13, his mental health is really something that he needs to take inventory of and make sure it's where he needs it to be. So I'm not sure if there were some things that Fletch may have been going through off the field or just from a mental health. I think it would wear on you the way that season played out for the Eagles, being 10-1, losing 6 of 7. It's a difficult place to play when you're losing. It's a great place to play when you're winning, but it's a difficult place to be when you're losing. And there's the constant scrutiny, and there's the constant questions, and there's everyone trying to understand why did this team fall apart. And I think some of that may also be wearing on some of these guys too as well. And when Fletch talked about that and told me a little bit of what he's thinking, I thought that it's probably going to be, as you called it, Jody, a domino effect. Let Jason have his moment first. Maybe these other guys, and I know BG already said he wants to play. I don't anticipate that he changed his mind, but I think Fletch would be next. And truth be told, I don't know that he's going to be able to find much in the way of free agency. He's still certainly a capable player and a veteran presence and a leader. And I'm sure at some point, depending on what the salary looks like, but he talked about also whether or not he can dominate on the field. And some guys don't feel like, if I can't be that dominant player, I don't want to go out there and be a role-playing type guy. So I do think that the end is going to be here and close for Fletcher Cox too as well. I think I'd be a little bit surprised if he does come back.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Rob, you make there about dominant players. Sometimes they don't want to be still playing just to hang on, to not play, to be the role player, to take the step down. And Fletcher sort of did it opposite of Jason Kelce. Think about, Jason was a very good player early in his career, but really kicked in late in his career, all pro, whatever, the last 6 years. He wasn't always that dominant player as a younger player. When Chip Kelly was here, people were talking about him getting cut. That's how it was. Whereas Fletcher was dominant early in his career. And maybe he doesn't want to be that role player. Maybe it just comes down as simple as that. I'm with you with BG, though. BG's playing year 15, man. He's coming back. He wants to finish 15 years with one team. And I think the Eagles will allow him to do it because I think the contract is easy. He's still a worthy role player. He's still successful in that role. So I do think it's not going to reach the domino effect of Brandon Graham. But getting back to Jason Kelce for a minute, because you were here, I was not here yet. In 2011, I think would have been Jason's first year.
Yeah.
And Howie loves telling that story, Rob. I'm sure you heard it. Howard Mudd came up to him and said, "Hey, we got a starting player here. This guy's going to be a leader of your team." And Howie's like, "Oh, great. We're going to, a couple years we'll have a starting level player." And he's like, "No, right now, rookie season as a 6th-round pick." And sure enough, started every game as a rookie. He got hurt, I think, the next year, but then it was off and running. Pretty amazing story as a 6th-round pick.
Yeah, it really is. To be a 6th-round pick and to go into a perennial Pro Bowl, All-Pro guy and a future Hall of Famer, that's just a tremendous find for the Eagles. One of their all-time greatest draft picks, and I have to take a look and think back again to, you put Jordan Mailata in there. I think you put Jalen Hurts in there too as a 2nd-round pick, who, depending on how the future pans out. But Jason Kelce, 6th-round pick, Hall of Famer, that's got to be right there in the top 1, 2, or 3.
Agreed.
For sure.
So how did the Eagles advance here? We got a chance to lose Jason Kelce later today. Got a chance to lose Fletcher Cox later in the week. And they've already lost Kevin Byard. I just don't know how you're going to keep the Eagles together.
Kevin Byard taking shrapnel here in Philadelphia, Rob.
Yeah, he's taking some of it from me. Sorry about that, Kevin. Talk about the greatest draft picks that the Eagles have ever made. Kelce, one of them. The deal that Howie made for Kevin Byard, 2 draft picks and a player, not really one of Howie's winners. Who's going to be playing safety for the Eagles this upcoming year, Rob Marty? They got 2 guys under contract right now, one of which we know is probably not going to be able to start the season in Sidney Brown because his injury is going to have him rehabbing until after the season starts. Who the hell's going to be playing safety for the Birds?
No, man, you're going to have to dive into free agency for some stopgaps and look at the draft and see what they can come up with there. And they got some holes. They're going to have some holes. I think they're going to have to fill in a cornerback. They got a safety. They're going to have to bring in a linebacker. This is a team that is going to be a little bit in transition, but I also don't think they're going to take enough of a step back to be rebuilding. But certainly you got to look at the safety position. You got to look at some of those holes that are going to be created. How are you going to replace Jason Kelce on the offensive line? I know Jurgen's supposed to slide in there. Now you got a hole at the guard position too as well. So Kevin Byard's short little non-memorable stay in Philadelphia ends up being costly in terms of draft picks and what you have to.
Yeah. His hometown too. Didn't work out. Didn't work out coming back.
I think Howie will get some picks back some way, somehow. Howie's a mover and a shaker, and you can always trade down and accumulate some more picks. He'll find some ways to make up for those draft picks.
Out in Indy, Rob, there were a couple guys who mentioned the Eagles might be interested in bringing GJ back, CJ Gardner-Johnson. Now, a couple things there. One, I think they realized, hey, we really need a playmaker on the back end, and CJ was certainly that when he was here. But he didn't leave here under the best of circumstances. Now, maybe he found out, guess what? Howie wasn't disrespecting him with the contract offer because he got what he got from Detroit. 1 year prove-it deal. He got injured. Is that enough for CJ's sort of camp to say, you know what? I was great there. Let's revisit this. Let's try to make magic again. He got his car stolen here. A lot of fans weren't the best when he left. Does that impact it? What do you think of those rumors of a potential reunion with CJ Gardner-Johnson?
I think those are rumors that make sense because you look at the need, you look at the familiarity with the player, and you just do the simple math. 2 and 2 equals 4 there. But I think there's a lot that goes into that. What is he going to want on the open market? We saw what his value was last year, and certainly it was a contract. It was a money issue with him not coming back to the Eagles. And I don't know that the Eagles are going to be wanting to spend, and there's a increase certainly in the salary cap, and you got extra money to allocate if you want to, but I don't anticipate the Eagles wanting to give a multi-year deal to GJ. They didn't last year, and he's coming off an injury-plagued season. Why would you want to do that this year? So if he's willing to take another 1 year prove-it type deal at decent numbers as a stopgap type guy, I think there could be something there. I would anticipate, though, also for him, he'll get some opportunities with some other teams and see if he
Denard Wilson's in Tennessee now. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
There you go. That can happen. I'm not a big CJ Gardner-Johnson fan, just from the standpoint of his back and forth with everybody. And who was it? At Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, and he's talking about the Buccaneers' weapons, and he mentions a guy who's injured, who hasn't been there all season, and Baker comes back with, well, he's certainly not watching the film. So Russell Gage, it was Russell Gage talking about what a weapon Russell Gage has been for the Buccaneers. Hasn't played it down all year, man. So those kind of guys sometimes will irk me a little bit. So I think the Eagles might be going in a different direction. It's a name that makes sense. And at this point, guys, we're going to hear as free agency, everybody's interested in everybody. Nobody's going to rule out, and nobody's going to rule out any team. You're going to hear a million theories. You're going to hear a million players who are this team's considering and wanting to look at and all that stuff. And it's a matter of how you dissect what those agents are giving you.
All right. I got a willing to spend question. Because you just said the Eagles have shown a propensity not to be willing to spend top of the market, above and beyond what seems to be fair market value for a player. They're not necessarily willing to spend at safety. They're not necessarily willing to spend at linebacker. They're not necessarily willing to spend interior offensive line. I asked John earlier, could they draft a center if Jason Kelsey's going to walk away? And he said, no, they're going to move Juergens into center. Well, will they draft a guard? Well, they don't necessarily put as much of a value on the guard position. We know damn well they're not going to pay a running back. That's a foregone conclusion. So safety, linebacker, running back, interior lineman, who the hell are they going to spend money on? They're in good cap shape now. Not great. Middle of the pack in the NFL. They got some flexibility. Where are they going to spend it? If they're not going to buy a linebacker or a safety, a cornerback, are they going to go overpay for a cornerback again? How'd that work with Bradbury this year? Not great. Where are they going to spend? They do have the cap one up. They're in decent shape. Where are they going to take their big plunge, Rob Motti?
They've done that with corner, and it's worked way back. If you go back to Troy Vincent, it didn't, and Asante Samuel didn't work with Nnamdi Asomugha and Bradbury worked for a year. So the corner position is one where I think this regime will spend some money for sure. But I think, Jody, some of that money may go into re-upping some guys too. You look at Devontae Smith's contract. You look at extending some potential guys.
Landon Dickerson. They got to get Landon done before
Dickerson
Devontae because he's the second round pick instead of the first. So they don't have that extra year, the extra cushion. And Landon's been tremendous. So they got to get him done. Yeah, you're right, Rob. There's, and then you got to sign your draft picks, over the cap does a tremendous job of whatever they call it, real cap value, whatever, because people never focus it. Oh, the Eagles have whatever they have now. It's about 40 million, but then you got to sign your draft picks. So the effective cap space is whatever, 35, 36 million,
which probably puts them in the middle of the league, right?
A little bit. I think I'll double check. They're probably a little bit under middle, probably 18th, 19th, but I'll double check as you guys talk. They don't have, there's a lot of teams with a ton of money. And you never really want to be in that position because generally when you're in that position, Rob, you're usually a bad football team.
You got a bad football team. You need to keep
and you look at some of the positions and the guys have like it's in free agency, for example, there's wide receivers. The Eagles don't need to go out there. They don't have to bring in a Mike Evans. You're looking at bringing in a guy who's a number 3.
By the way, the Bucs re-signed Mike Evans. They're so he'll be back.
Happened?
Yeah, that just happened this morning. So he'll be back with your Bucs as you're in the Tampa area.
Hall of Fame wide receiver, first ballot right there. A guy that we saw that trending. He didn't want to leave. I don't know why I don't know why you would want to leave Tampa. I can attest to that. So it makes sense, but they're not going to be in the market for guys who are at that position who are going to be superstars. So I think they do have to bring in a viable third wide receiver option for sure, but you can find that at lesser dollar value. I do think that this is a team that is going to be in that, hey, can we win it all this year? And I don't know that they've come to that determination yet.
Yeah,
the way things ended, I don't know that they're 2 players, 3 players away from being a Super Bowl champion in 2024.
Third wide receiver, Quez, we hardly knew ye. No, we knew Quez way too well. That's why Rob Marty is exactly right, and they need to be moving on. And that Evans signing, it's was a long shot. That it's bad news for the Eagles because if they had to keep Evans, they want to keep Baker, and they get a franchise tag, and they only got one to use. I thought maybe, just maybe, longest of shots, Antoine Winfield could become available. And there's a guy. I don't care what freaking position he plays. You pay him. He's top of the market. He's as good as it gets in the National Football League. But getting Evans re-signed makes it much more likely that Winfield's getting a franchise tag than they're in Tampa, doesn't it, Rob?
I think they're going to do everything they can to keep him. I'm not sure, Jody, about the franchise tag. It's certainly an option, and it's one way to make sure you're going to keep
the safety net is what it is. You try and get a deal done. You negotiate as best you can. Yeah. You get pushed up against the wall. With what a franchise tag.
And he's such an all-around versatile player. This is a guy that had one of the all-time best seasons from safety in league history, from what he was, from the number of sacks and everything else, fumbles and forced fumbles, and what he can do playing in the slot and everything else. He's that valuable of a player. If there's a guy on that team you're going to want to franchise, you should want to franchise him, as you said, as a safety net. I think they'll get something done with him long term, but that's a guy who is going to get a lot of interest. And for the Bucs, Baker's at the top of their list. Antoine, you got to bring him back. But bringing Mike Evans back means you're going all in. You're not going to sit there and bring back a player like that and pay him the money after a decade of success. He's going to be, at some point, he's not going to play up to that contract. I would certainly not anticipate that happening. So they're going for it, and I don't know that they're going to be.
I think it was. By the way, Rob, it was 2 years, $52 million for Mike Evans, $35 million guaranteed. So I think it was sensible, short, Makes 2 sense. Years at his age. So I think the Bucs did a good job there. Obviously, representative of the type of player he is as well. You mentioned Baker Mayfield. quarterback musical chairs. Other than Justin Fields, is this all ado about nothing? The Bucks want Baker Mayfield back. The Vikings want Kirk Cousins back. The Falcons could get involved, I guess, when it comes to Cousins. Or is it just going to be everybody stays put except Justin Fields, and Justin goes, whether it's Atlanta or Pittsburgh, somewhere of that nature? A lot of good quarterbacks in the draft.
Of those three, I think Justin's going to be the only one moving. Don't forget Russell Wilson, too, is going to be.
Yeah, Russell. Yeah.
Russell's got to be on the move. But just sitting down and speaking with Baker, speaking with Kirk over the past month or so, both guys want to be where they already are. And I don't think that another team is going to swoop in. Now, you're going to hear, until those deals get done, until Baker's deal gets done with Tampa, and until Kirk's deal gets done with Minnesota, the agents are going to want to make sure that there's some pressure put on. So you're going to hear, oh, this team's going to be interested. Atlanta's going to be interested in Kirk, or so-and-so is going to make – that's going to happen. We're going to hear that. But I think both of those guys, and especially in Baker's case with Liam Cohn coming in as the offensive coordinator, someone he's familiar with them keeping Mike Evans, like it's a home run. It's a slam dunk. He wants to be there. He wants to stay in the city, loves it here, and I think that's going to happen. And the same with Kirk, and I think there's enough pressure on the Vikings internally from players like Justin. They got to get Justin Jefferson figured out too as well, and he's going to get an astronomical dollar amount. So Mike Evans gets his average annual of 26. I think JJ is going to be in the 30 to 35. Yeah. Range. So that's going to take up a lot, but I think that Kirk Cousins is going to end up going back there. So you're going to look at Justin Fields. He's going to have to be on the move. The Bears last year had their shot at Bryce Young. They had their shot at CJ Stroud. They said, no, thank you. We're going to trade out, and still ended up with the number one pick. And Justin Fields, I don't think their logic was flawed last year. They had Justin Fields. They had an opportunity to accumulate some assets in the draft. They did it. They bring in DJ Moore, and they end up with the number one pick again and a shot at Caleb Williams. And I don't think they're going to pass that up this year. So Justin Fields is going to be that guy that that ends up on the move, whether it's Pittsburgh, whether it's Atlanta, wherever it may be. And then the Russell Wilson situation still got to be figured out. And I don't think Russell Wilson's done being a good football player. I thought he put up some pretty good numbers last year, and he didn't win enough to stay in Denver. But I think wherever he goes, if it's the right situation, he can impact that team and still play at a star quality caliber quarterback level. And I think that's going to be the big addition for one of these teams, is bringing in Russ.
What are you hearing? I know you got your finger on the pulse of stuff like this. What's Chicago going to get back for Fields? If that's the way they're leaning, and they're going to use a pick out of first round and quarterback, Caleb Williams or any of the other two that are thought to be up there, what are they going to get for Fields in return? I know it's kind of fluctuated during the season. Yeah. I remember one time I saw they could get a 1, and I'm going, really? I'm as big a Justin Fields fan as there is, and I never thought they were going to be able to get a 1 back for him, but I thought a 2 was doable. Now I'm hearing 3 or 4. What if the value just isn't there? Bears got to do it, got to pull a plug, got to move on. If they're getting lousy return on them, could they even keep Fields and have a competition at quarterback?
Joe, it's a question I've heard being asked a lot lately, is what is the value of Justin Fields, and what's going to be enough for them to pull the trigger on that? It's nobody I spoke to thinks it's going to be a 1. That right. They can get a 1 for Justin Fields, and that makes sense. And the ability to get a 2 is not definite either. That could be one of those deals where you always have the conditional. If he starts X amount of games, or if he takes certain number of snaps, the 3 becomes a 2, the 4 becomes a 3. But I think it's going to be a combination somewhere along there. The best being a 2, and then maybe a 3 and a 4, something along those lines. But just a couple picks and maybe a swap of late round, a swap of a 5 and a swap of a 4, a swap of whatever it may be. But that's about it. And that's the big question. We'll see how it plays out. And it's going to have to play out fairly soon. Whoever's going into the draft who's going to acquire Justin Fields needs to know at that point that they have him, and that the draft picks have been traded. And there's certainly, the Bears are going to have to make that decision quickly.
Marty, man, Go ahead.
I just want to say at Rob Motti, make sure you follow Rob on X, Twitter. Does a tremendous job with the AP Pro Football Podcast. I haven't talked to you since the Super Bowl, Rob, so I know you were out in Vegas. We started with Jason Kelce. We'll end with Jason Kelce. He was omnipresent. You got any stories of shirtless Jason Kelce at the poker tables or Lady Gaga concerts or whatever the heck he was doing out there? But he certainly looked like he was about to retire when he was out in Vegas.
He did. I didn't run into Jay. I didn't even run into him on the red carpet this year at NFL Honors, or we weren't in the same circle this past. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to run into Jason and his future sister-in-law or anything along those lines. But I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to do next. But if he's going to be in the booth or he's going to do some analyzing work or anything else, we may not see him shirtless rooting on Travis.
Yeah. Got to put the tie on, suit and tie. Got to Justin Timberlake it. Got to put that on.
I just got a text from a source that said, Taylor Swift might be in Xfinity Live today. That there could be a party.
Don't set that up. There'll be traffic down there. Like, you don't say that, Jody. God, you'll kill us. We're trying to get down there.
Just saying, the Swifties could be in the house. They could be in South Philly, over by Rob Mouty's old stomping grounds. That could happen today.
I am glad to be however many thousands of miles away I am right now from that Swiftie collaboration.
By the way, for those who think Jody is serious, Taylor is in Singapore.
Oh,
so Travis
quick plane. Can she get a fast? She got back to the Super Bowl pretty fast from Japan. So maybe she can get to South. No, probably not. Oh, well.
She did, but she is in Singapore, so no.
How the hell do you know where Taylor Swift is?
Because
how did you look that up that fast?
Because
you got a Taylor Swift website where you go Taylor. You got on the phone where it tells my.
No, as I said, Travis is in Philadelphia to do a fundraiser, and obviously people putting it together with Jason's potential retirement. So Travis is in Philadelphia probably for both of those reasons. And there's a bunch of stories already out there from TMZ, blah, blah, blah. Travis Kelce visits Philadelphia while Taylor Swift performs in Singapore. So,
so TMZ,
thankfully,
I'm outed as a bad source by TMZ. Damn, that's not good when you're topped by TMZ. Monty, man, always a pleasure. You have a good time at Disney last week with the girls?
It worked out a whole lot better than the combine where I thought I was going to be, but that didn't pan out. So why not? Yeah, it was great.
Glad you had a great time with the girls. Thank you very much for jumping on with us tonight. We'll get you back up in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Rob.
Take care.
Rob Motti here with us on Birds 365.
You're scared. Yeah, don't do that to me, Jody, because they will show up if they think Taylor's.
But I just throw some stuff at the wall and see if any of it's stuck. We didn't even get into the whole Motti running the awards dinner and the guys who won awards and whatever. We haven't had him on since any of that stuff happened. And there's a whole bunch of stuff I wanted to ask him about that we couldn't.
Well, we didn't know this was happening, during the show. For once, the news breaks during the show, not immediately after the show. So.
Exactly. Well,
we were going to talk about a bunch of combine stuff. We didn't even get to talk about the combine because
no combine stuff. Yes, Jason Kelce press conference 1:00 this afternoon. We'll come back and I'm going to hold Johnny Mac's feet to the fire. He's going to have to make a call, yay or nay. Is Jason Kelce retired? This is about a 98% shot that he gets this one right. I give you my thoughts. Come back and put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Mac and Mac coming back to put a bow on the show. Didn't know this was going to happen when we signed in 2 hours ago that story was going to break, that Jason Kelce was calling a news gathering down at the NovaCare complex for later on this afternoon. Major speculation by both McDonald and McMullen here that he's going to announce his retirement. We don't know that. We can root against that, but it's most likely that's exactly what's going to occur, and how many of his teammates will show up, and what Jason going to say. What's Howie going to say? Will Howie break down and cry today? Is there a chance Howie Roseman cries today with Jason Kelce announcing his retirement?
I don't think there is a chance Howie cries. I don't think Howie's a crier. Jason's a crier.
You know, and he's a pretty emotional guy. Howie's not afraid to show his emotion.
I don't think I've ever seen Howie cry.
Around Kelce, when they bro hugged and he bought him the keg and he would decide he was coming back.
I'm trying to think. I can't think of a time I saw Howie cry in public. Not that I saw him cry not in public. I can't think of a time I saw that. And maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but
this is one of his guys that he has gone to the
now
match.
Jason is a crier. He's not Dick Vermeil.
Jason could absolutely cry today. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, he's absolutely cry. And you're talking about, is he going to retire or not? I'm at 99.9% he's going to retire. Think about calling a press conference to say you're coming back. You look like a horse's ass if you're coming back, right?
You're going to go there, huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
Why would you do that? No, I'm just saying from the standpoint of how you would handle it. If you're coming back, you handle it like he has the last couple of years. You buy a keg, you talk about it, everybody's celebratory. You don't drag everybody down to a press conference to say, I'm coming back.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question. Let's throw Jason one more prop before we get out of here. He could have gone, and I said this, so I might have to give him that much more credit tomorrow. I thought this was going to be a New Heights announcement, that Jason, being the ever forward-moving media potential star that he is, already has one of the most popular podcasts on the planet, that's a pretty good piece of entertainment you can put on your own podcast. I'm coming back, I'm retiring. Whichever way he goes, save for New Heights, he isn't. He's giving it to the Philadelphia media and the Philadelphia fans. And I just put him in that order. It could be Philadelphia fans before the Philadelphia media. He's honoring Philadelphia by doing it this way rather than doing it on his podcast. Agree or disagree?
I think he wants to honor people. As I mentioned, I brought up Howard Mudd a couple of times. I think he wants to bring up people and teammates and people.
We could do that on the New Heights podcast, just to say.
Yeah, he could. He's gonna. There's some stuff I can't talk about yet that I'll talk about tomorrow on the show. You'll see evident by how it shakes out, but he's still got plenty. He'll still have plenty to talk about.
You're doing a Craig Carton on us? You tease us a little bit, and not give us the info?
No, because unlike Craig Carton, it's off the record information. It's not, which I can talk about.
What if
tomorrow.
somebody gave Craig Carton the stuff that he went off the record?
Because I can talk. I will talk about it tomorrow. I will not make something
You'll
up.
clean up. You'll clean up whatever mess needs to be cleaned up tomorrow, Johnny Mac.
I will talk.
Good
And
job.
what I'm trying to say is he's going to have plenty of material for New Heights as well, so he can serve both masters.
Okay.
And I can talk about it tomorrow. It's not. Craig Carton.
Yeah, Craig still hasn't gotten around to saying.
And by the way, we got to go, but I want to mention Chris Mortensen passed away. There's so much story, and as I put on Twitter, and you saw it all over the place. It's easy to talk about how good he was at his job, and I used the term kind. That's what, nobody was more helpful, big time guy, heavyweight, but he talked to everybody, he'd help everybody, and that to me was much more about what Chris and what type of person he was. So I wanted to mention that. We didn't get to it, unfortunately, because of everything happening. But man, you talk about NFL insiders. He was the first. He was the best, and he'll always be the best in my mind.
And I got a chance to work with Mort. I've worked on and off during the years for ESPN, much more off than on, but I've had like 3 different stints working for ESPN in different positions and the like. And I did get a chance to work firsthand with Mort, just a complete class guy and a great guy and the like. So kudos for John for sneaking that in. Thank you very much. I got it on my show sheet. But sometimes you don't get everything in you want to talk about. Well, here's how we rectify that. We come back and we get it in tomorrow. J Mac, you're back here. I know you'll be busy today. People got to follow you on Twitter. I'm sure you'll be jumping on at some point again today on JAKIB. That's a possibility. But you'll definitely be back here with me tomorrow, right?
Yeah, let's do it. More to talk about.
More and different stuff, because we'll have Jason's decision by the time we get back here on Birds 365 tomorrow in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.